Hello, Wayne here from Talk Cars. We often get asked what mods to do and in what order they should be done. So in this video we're going to look at 5 steps to tuning your car to maximise the return that you'll get on your power. Keep watching to the end to find out the massive difference it makes to your power if you do these 5 mods in the correct order. People selling performance parts often disappoint their customers. There's lots of bad advice out there, and we sadly see people wasting so much money on their car tuning project just by getting the wrong parts or doing things in the wrong order. So what we're going to do is pass on all this feedback in this video so that you can maximise the return you get for your investment in your car tuning project. Please subscribe to get more in-depth tuning tips. We'll be covering articles on getting the most power from your specific engine in future videos and blowing a lot of the commonly held tuning myths out of the water. We're going to break down the word safer and show the stages that you need to do in order to tune your car correctly. Before we begin, please light up that like button. It really helps us to get out there, and we're very grateful for all of the support that we've been given over the years. The first area we're going to cover is the S of safer, strengthening. If you put more power through your engine, you're putting more strain on that engine. So at what point do we need to think about upgrading the internal components of the engine and making them stronger? Well, if you have a turbocharged engine, in most cases that power limit is around 30 to 40%. So you'll get away with increasing the power by that much before things start to break. The most common weak area in an engine is typically the clutch. This will start to slip, and as you increase the power, the clutch that's slipping will wear more quickly, and you'll be losing the power through the slippage of the clutch. On a naturally aspirated engine, the power limits are generally about 20%, but we're going to be looking in future videos at some very special engines that are strong enough to withstand twice their standard power. Yes, you can double the power of these engines without needing to strengthen or reinforce the internal parts, and they make a great basis for a tuning project. So stay tuned to find out what these very special project engines are. So adding forged parts to your engine will make it stronger. It will be able to tolerate a lot more power. Getting those parts balanced and blueprinted and then fitted to an engine will also increase the threshold of your engine and allow you to hit those much higher power limits. So in your tuning project you need oxygen and fuel, and they need to be provided in a very specific ratio for you to get power out of the engine. You can't just add more fuel or more air. The engine will typically run rich or run lean, and both are a big problem for your engine. So you've got to get the ratios correctly. So when tuning your car after strengthening, you need to sort out those areas. So the A of safer brings us to the air intake. Now you want to remove any restriction in the air intake, and the more highly tuned the engine is going to be, the greater that restriction is. You can see in another video that we've done quite recently what we think about induction kits and air intakes. But whatever you do, don't forget to get a cold air feed to bring fresh cold air into that intake. You do not want to be sucking warm air from the engine bay into the engine, because that carries less oxygen, and you need the oxygen to create a good efficient burn. Did you hear about the guy who threw away his air filter because it was collecting dust? There's so many upgrades available for air intakes. We won't go into them all in this video, but just fitting a performance panel filter or a well-designed induction kit can reap dividends and really increase that threshold that you hit before you start getting a restriction in your air intake. However hard you tune your car, you will eventually hit a restriction in the intake, so it's best to get that addressed early on and make sure that there's no restrictions there that you're going to hit further down the line. Moving on to the F of safer, we come to fueling. We've spoken about air, we know we need to match air and fuel. So the most common problems that we hear about in tuning projects generally relates to fuel issues. Maybe the fuel pump is unable to supply enough fuel to the injectors, or maybe the injectors just can't supply enough fuel to the engine to match the amount of air that's coming into it. Both of those problems are avoidable if we just specify better quality injectors and a higher capacity fuel pump. The spray pattern is also critical. If the injectors have become clogged up and worn, you won't get a fine mist of fuel coming out. It'll tend to dribble out and it'll collect in the bottom of the cylinder. That's not good. It'll prevent you from having a good clean burn in the engine, and you'll be losing power and just wasting fuel. Thankfully, most car fuel systems are fairly well specified, so you need to tune them to quite an extent before you start hitting limitations. Again, all engines are different. We're going to be covering engines more specifically in future videos, but check out the thousands of articles we've got on our website. We're bound to have one that covers your engine and your car. In those, we pass on all the information and tips that we've collected over the last 20 odd years. So moving on to the E of safer, we come to the exhaust. Now, viewers of this channel or regulars will know that we've recently done a video on exhaust where we've blown the myth out of the water that bigger is not always better. So we look at ways of improving the flow of air through the exhaust. Now, most modern exhausts come with some kind of pollution control, be it a catalyst or a particulate filter. All of those devices will add up to a restriction, and as you tune the car, you will start to hit that restriction and flow will be limited. So it's really good to address that early on in your car tuning project. So looking for a performance alternative, a high flow sports catalyst, a performance particulate filter. We know in most countries we can't remove those pollution controls and keep the car legal. It's good to make an investment in a performance alternative that will flow better and remove that bottleneck or restriction from the exhaust system. So finally we move on to the R of safer, and this is probably the most important part of any tuning project, and it is always the thing that should be done last. It ties together all of the mods you've done. So we're talking about remaps. Getting the mapping correct is absolutely critical in your car tuning project. The map controls the ignition timing and the fueling, and if you've got a turbo car, it can also control the air intake as well. So making sure that all of those are spot on, you can really maximise the power output of the car. We've seen differences of about 20% between a good map and a bad map. You really do want to get that spot on. If that map is not spot on, you'll start to hit problems, and the more highly tuned the engine is, the less threshold there is for getting it wrong. So it really is vital that you get your car set up correctly by someone who understands mapping, and we really do recommend you getting it set up on a rolling road so they can look at your engine and the mods you've done and tune that map to make sure you get the maximum return from every little part that you've added to that vehicle. And we say do the remapping last because you can't take into account future mods. If you put your car on a rolling road and tell the guy, well, I'm going to get a performance exhaust in a few months' time, he's not going to know how well that's going to flow. He'll just be guessing, and you'll end up having to get it mapped again to get the maximum return for all those parts. So it's critical really that the map is left till last. When you've done all your mods and you've got a clear power figure you're aiming for, the mapper can take all of these things and just produce that finished package for you. Now here's the crazy thing, if we'd only done the remap, we would only be looking at around 2 brake horsepower gain on a naturally aspirated engine and about 34 brake horsepower on a turbo engine, assuming a base power level of 90 brake horsepower. But because we've done the strengthening, the air intake, the fueling and the exhaust upgrades, that same remap is now yielding 11 bhp more on a naturally aspirated engine and another 70 brake horsepower on a turbocharged engine. So it really does pay to get all of these baseline mods sorted first. They give you a great basis for your tuning project, and you really get to take it to the next level, fully utilising that when the remap is done. So in this video we've only looked at power mods. We strongly recommend that you look at braking. We've got videos covering all the aspects of uprating your braking system both now and a few planned in the future. So make sure you subscribe to avoid missing out on those, and also look to improve the handling of the car. It's one thing just making it go faster, you want it to handle well through the corners. Coming up soon, we've got a lot more videos helping you to maximise the performance of your car and get the most enjoyment from it for the time and money that you're spending on your project. Don't forget to stay tuned to keep tuning. Thanks so much for watching and joining us, and I'll see you in the next video.